So what is going on, everybody? It's been quite a while since we've done this. We are looking at my CYBRLFT RoboTaxi dashboard, if this is at all confusing to anybody. This is the main dashboard, link of which is down in the description of the YouTube channel if you want to actually explore this. I mean, you can go in and look at it, just like I'm looking at it. You can click through all these individual spots. This is essentially updated in real time, even down to all these categories for all the different types of disengagements, the frequency, and of course this is looking at everything in a historical context over all of the data gathered since 10.8.1, and it's thanks to Elias Martinez. A lot of you probably have been following him already. Fantastic source of data through the community tracker, and he's responsible for the beauty of this dashboard. I'm the field scientist to his data expertise. And now those of you who have been in the hardware 3 world with me, our journey has come to a bit of a halt here with 12.6.4. We had a pretty rapid cadence of updates, when we were coming through 12.6. We got 12.6.2, 12.6.3, and 12.6.4 within a rather quick succession of one another, which we'll go ahead and click on these, which you can do. You can click on them individually like that. But back to our version 12 journeys here on, hardware 3, us peasants that don't have the hardware 4 upgrade or any real idea of when that may come, are still kind of holding on to see what might happen. I know a lot of people have said on X that version 14 priorities, CYRCAD priorities, next level AI stuff priorities. I get it, that is what it is. I would love to see something, at 12.6.5, at 12.5, or sorry, 12.7, 12.8, whatever. I would love to see us get the features for, reverse, the 3-point turn capabilities that version 13 has. But, at the end of the day, we might all just be kind of waiting in this sort of limbo until they decide to finally go ahead and retrofit us all with hardware 4. That'll affect me a lot differently and probably a lot of you, because I didn't buy FSD outright. I don't own it. I just subscribe to it. I rent it month to month for $100. So I wouldn't be one of those people, rightly so, that would qualify for a free upgrade to hardware 4. I'd pay for it. I'd drop a couple grand to make that happen. It'd be really cool to bring my hardware 3 car up to date. But we've hashed this out before in the comments on X and such, and I know the majority of people's feelings about it. So hopefully we just see some movement with that regard going into the future. A lot of you know that my plan is to get the Model Y performance when it drops. So still kind of holding out for that. And I am just working my butt off to keep whatever content I can flowing to the CYBRLFT channel, as well as my new venture in gaming, which the link to the gaming channel, Twitch, X, YouTube, all that will be down in the description if you're curious. I'm focusing on Star Citizen, a really big space sim game. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look real quick here on 12.6.4's latest and greatest. Jumping into our RoboTaxi results, we've crossed that 50 trip threshold. I was doing like an every 3 day sort of update on how this is all performing for a while, but kind of fell off because of how busy I was getting and trying to keep up with everything on top of the lack of new updates. So I just figured I'd check in and show that, we have dipped back down a bit in our success over these 53 trips, just under what 12.6.2 is performing, but we're still in the 80s. That's good. That's about what I would expect out of a hardware 3 version 12 build. And I never really expected to get much above 90%, to be honest. I feel like version 13 is probably there and beyond. It'd be really cool to eventually test that once I've got my hardware 4 Model Y Mewtwo. So we'll see. But, it's still decent. The majority of rides are going by without a hitch. A little bit more than 8 out of 10 rides are completely autonomous. And people, as you've seen in my ride-along videos, are none the wiser. They have no idea. Reactions are varied. I am going to continue to try to get fun customer reactions, but, truth is most people aren't really saying much. And, it's a good thing that the more boring FSD gets is an indicator, or I should say a better way to put it is the more boring it is, the better it is, because that means FSD is doing the job. It's just getting it done, and there's not really a whole lot to report on because it's just that good. It's blending in. Eventually, as we march up higher and higher in our success rates with customers into the high 90s and on, it'll essentially be a solved problem. It'll start to appear that it's just a matter of scaling at that point, which is another reason I can't wait to get that software, because I would love to be able to track that progress. We're looking at RoboTaxi by distance. It's all kind of sort of leveling out here in the 80% between, our under 10 kilometer, our 10 to 30 kilometer, and our greater than 30 kilometer. So what I'm noticing, even in a short kind of bit of time here, or what's the better way to put it? Maybe a focused sample size between 12.6.2 and 12.6.4 is that it's a bit of a leveling off, as we're coming over. And who knows, we might see some more improvement if we get another update before we get some sort of movement in the version 12, version 13, will they, won't they kind of thing with our upgraded hardware. But I feel like version 12 is probably going to be about as good as it's going to get going forward, with marginal difference. Things that I hope still get iterated and improved on, and I am constantly sending feedback to Tesla as much as I can, are probably more quality of life and etiquette, convenience sort of improvements than, more severe things. Like the stuttering at stop signs, where, especially in residential areas, when you got a lot of stop signs, and it'll creep to a stop, and then start to go, and then stop again, and then start to go slowly. By this point, you're absolutely getting honked at unless you gave it throttle and got out of there. And I've been recording some video catching some of these things, so I'll try to put that together, maybe like a gripes with 12.6.4 sort of video, or needed improvements or things I hope change. I haven't had as many issues in this build with the whole leading the red light into running the red light prevention sort of scenario. That's only happened maybe once on this build. Aside from that, it's been pretty good. Really, the lane selection, prioritizing the upcoming maneuver is decent. It's caused a couple of failed customer trips because it wants to get around a car instead of getting into its turn lane. There are a couple of areas where we've got a right turn coming up in less than 100 meters and it's trying to get into the left lane, which takes me back to like early version 11 days. So we're kind of bouncing around, but, keeping in mind that over 80% of trips are basically flawless. It's the last 15 to 17% that we're seeing these issues arise that we want to see improve. Now, let me actually jump into causation real quick, see if I can jog my memory on perhaps what is going on with our critical disengagements. We're actually going to dip out of everything except 12.6.4. So yeah, you'll notice 5 traffic control here. Now, the issue with leading the red, like you're stopped and you start going and might run the red, that has only had like 1 occurrence. However, the other 4 are cases where the lights turned yellow and been yellow for a minute, and you should have definitely stopped, and there is no indication from FSD that it is going to actually come to a stop. As typically on these Florida roads where the speed limit's around 55 miles an hour, or about 90K, and you're kind of flying down, generally it's pretty decent at deciding when it's going to run the yellow or come to a stop. But there have been at least 4 cases, reflected here, where I've had to get on the brakes, and get on the brakes pretty hard because it definitely needed to stop. There was plenty of time to stop. We had the yellow for pretty much the full duration of the yellow, and by the time I'm taking over and hitting the brakes, the light's turning red and we are nowhere near passing through. And on at least 2 or 3 of these occasions, I've had a customer with me as well. So we're not taking any outsized risk. We're just going to report it back to Tesla and say, hey, we needed to come to a stop at this light. This wasn't cool. We don't need to pretend that we're a kid in a BMW M3 trying to push the yellow. You know what I mean? But yeah, the overwhelming majority are basic skill issue related things, not choosing the right lane, just making really dumb mistakes that you would expect the system to be past, but sometimes you're just having a bad day. So yeah, with those, traffic control issues and some other things, it's definitely not the direction we wanted to see, but it's kind of all wrapped into the same bucket as far as the 12.6 branch, 12.6.3 clearly being the king. Hopefully we get something new that sort of shifts this into a whole new level. You can tell that as compared to the early 12 builds before it, we did have a bit of a change that was definitely going towards a positive there. And ironically, we're at the same exact stat with 12.5.4.2 on the critical side, which, not great, not great. My driving frequency has dropped down a bit in the last couple of weeks as I've taken on some other things. But, fear not, I will continue to push and test and report back to Tesla and grab all the customers I can. And in that vein, let's check out our spread of Florida here. We're going to go ahead and back off of everything outside of 12.6, which makes us look a lot better. My goodness, yeah, let's throw in 12.5.4.1 and 12.5.4.2, and you just get a whole lot of red. So maybe that's a good little bit of perspective for you guys. When we get rid of those and just go to our 12.6 branch, we have a lot more pleasant reporting here. A lot of 100% success rate trips and such. Let's see what happens when we drop off 12.6.2. Still looking good. Drop off 12.6.3, and our area has shrunk a little bit, but we are looking good. We got a whole bunch of 100% success marks, and then what we would probably call the, B tier or A minus tier with regard to these 9 trips over in the Bartow area. Fort Meade, Frostproof section, Central Florida, it's all very country, open road, pretty easy. When you're getting into some of these areas in Lakeland, Haines City, Davenport, and of course up into the Orlando area, things get a lot more difficult. Tampa and all doing well. And let's see, there's not a whole lot else here. Haven't been back out to the Cape much in the recent testing. If we throw on 12.6.3 and 12.6.2 again, you can see a bit more of a spread of the different areas I was in. Lots of, good success over here on the coast, but there's not a whole lot happening here. These are usually very straight roads, very simple roads. Tougher in Sarasota and Bradenton area. These are going to be more challenging spots, kind of like the more busy Winter Haven, Haines City, Polk County area, as well as Orlando proper and Tampa proper, which I haven't had as much time in, actually. So let's see, we had over here about 3 trips with a 75% success rate, 6 trips to the airport, which were 100% successful, which is really impressive. And St. Petersburg down here, we had 3 trips, 75%. We had 1 trip down here with no success. So that just means that of the only trip that was taken, it was a failure near the Sarasota airport. So that is a look at the heat map of what's going on. I hope you guys do appreciate a little update on what's going on with the data here. We'll go ahead and kill these so we get a look at everything. Oh, I guess, last little point of interest, which is kind of cool. We saw the different ways that the modes were behaving, and we didn't really get to test chill mode on 12.6.2, but on 12.6.3 we did, and chill mode killed it. There definitely was some change that happened between 12.6.3 and 12.6.4, because, hurry mode is kind of taking the lead, but chill has dropped off by about half as far as its performance metric goes, with regard to hitting like over 400 kilometers before disengagement, almost 500, to it being down below where standard is here, and hurry was hurting. So there is some balancing, hurry mode's doing really well compared to its prior. Chill between the two is still kind of the king when you mix everything together, but it's also really slow and kind of annoying to deal with. So it's kind of cool to see hurry step up and be as reliable as it has been. That's about it for this update on the RoboTaxi report. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, feel free to click around, link in the description to this dashboard. You can see we've got 150K kilometers on the actual FSD, approaching 3,000 operational hours, over 2,200 RoboTaxi trips, which basically means that those were all graded with the standard of a site recap. So imagining that I'm not there. If I have to help, it's a failure. But super stoked to continue to monitor the progress of FSD going forward. Really look forward to eventually getting the Model Y. That'll be awesome. I haven't seen any whispers about when the performance might be dropping, so we'll see. I'm just keeping my eyes on everything that's going on. I hope that all of you are staying safe out there. I know a lot of you guys are out in those states where a lot of these attacks are happening. It's about 87% of these vandalisms are all happening in these deep blue cities, and that is sad to hear because I know it affects a lot of you guys. So please stay safe, stay alert, head on a swivel, maybe avoid the problem areas as best you can, and hopefully this wave of crazy will dissipate and we can all get back to some normalcy. But take care, my friends. I will catch you in the next video.